Our practice today is going to be a grid drawing, which is very much just a drawing inside of a grid. And so I have a couple examples of a grid drawing here. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so it's easier to see. But a grid drawing is really all about drawing a grid. And you can see my grids are a little wonky. They're not perfectly straight. So sometimes my shaky hand gets the better of me. But it's really just drawing a grid, something similar to just this, and then gradually adding in these marks using one supply at a time. And so, for example, with my grid here, I may start off with a marker and a scribble, and then do a scribble in each of those squares. And then change to another supply, say a purple marker, and it's adding that mark to each square. And it's just kind of building that up slowly. I'll guide us through this process today, but if any questions come up at any time, please feel free to ask. You can put it in the chat or you can voice it. Yu Ching is here with me today and she'll be able to help me keep an eye on the chat. So please ask. If a question comes up, please ask, because if you're thinking it, someone else probably is too. So there's no wrong question. All right. So like I said, the practice that we're doing today is very much a practice in mindful drawing. And I know if you've been with us for a while, we've done mindful drawing, different types of mindful drawing throughout this series so far. And this is no different. Our practice today is no different. It's mindfulness really is all about being in the moment, being present, not thinking about the what ifs of the past or the to-do lists of the future, but it's all about being in the moment and being immersed in what's right in front of us. You can do almost anything in a mindfulness, like mindfully, right? You can do washing the dishes. You can do it waiting in the line at the post office. But like I said, it's all about just being present and being in the moment. Right? And so what we're doing today is really focusing in on building these grids and adding these marks. And because there is no real representational thing that we're doing, it's just these abstracted lines. It is a practice in kind of letting go of our idea of what is right and perfect, because you'll probably get tired of me saying this. I know I say it a lot, and it's a good reminder for myself, which is mostly why I say it often, is that it doesn't have to be perfect. There is no right or wrong way to do any of these projects. It's all about just being present and being in the moment and just kind of letting ourselves slow down with the process. Right? I see a question in the chat is asking if it's supposed to be abstract or if it can be realistic. And the truth is either way is good. Whatever feels right to you is right when it comes to this. All right. So let's get ready to start our drawing. You want to start off just by getting comfortable in your space, just kind of relaxing in your chair, maybe taking a deep breath in and letting it go. And just have your supplies around gathered. Let's go ahead and start our process using whatever utensil you want. I'm going to use a black marker. And I'm going to start on my journal page. But again, know if you don't have your journal yet, that doing it on a piece of paper is just as wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead and start off by drawing some squares on my journal. I'm just going to kind of probably do maybe 6 squares. They don't have to be perfect. And just kind of filling the space. I know sometimes we can judge ourselves a little too harshly. I know sometimes I get frustrated by my crooked lines, but I see that someone's bringing up, they like to think of themselves as perfectly imperfect. And I think that's such a lovely saying, perfectly imperfect. I want to encourage us to kind of think on that too, that it's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to not have everything right and in order or super straight. I think when we kind of get that out of our mind and we get to really focus on the process and what we're doing, we tend to enjoy that process more. And so I want to encourage you to do that today as we do this drawing. So after you get your grid drawn, I've got 6 boxes, but of course draw how many boxes, however many you'd like. I did it in a black marker, and I'm going to take that black marker again, and I'm going to start by putting just a scribble in each one of those squares. You can follow along with me and do what I'm doing, or kind of strike out on your own. And take a moment to kind of go through with that marker, with that first supply, and do that scribble. Go in each one of your squares. Add that scribble in. They don't have to be the same. They can go outside of the box. I think mine kind of went out the little boundary. It's okay to color outside of the lines. Just go ahead and put that scribble in each one of those boxes. When you're ready, go ahead and pick out another utensil. Maybe it's a pencil, maybe it's a marker, maybe it's a pen or colored pencil. I'm going to start with an orange marker. Go ahead and add that mark to each one of your squares. It can be a scribble, it can be a line, it can be a shape. It doesn't have to be the same in each of those boxes. It's really just about adding that color in. Filling in that space. Making that color in every one, that mark, whatever utensil you have, just putting it in each one of those squares. And after you've added that in, go ahead and pull out a different utensil. I'm going to be using this black kind of paintbrush marker. I'm just going to add a little mark inside each of those squares again. We're taking our time with this, right? Knowing it doesn't have to be perfect. Doing this grid drawing, filling in each of these squares. It can be different in each one of those squares. It can be the same. Again, we're just taking our time with it. This grid drawing is a practice in being in the moment, not thinking about getting it exactly right. Just adding those marks and trusting the process, letting that mark making be the enjoyable part. We start off by doing that scribble in each one of the squares, and then changing utensils and trying it again with a different a different marker, a different color. We're taking our time with it, working with one utensil at a time, really adding on, knowing it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be straight. It can look however. When you're ready, go ahead and get another utensil out. Maybe this time you want to do a shape in your boxes. And that it's really a practice, a focus on being present and being in the moment and not really knowing what's coming, how it's going to turn out, but trusting that process and spending time slowing down and being really intentional about each of the supplies that we're using. And so I've gone through and done some lines and scribbles, and I'm going right now, I think I'm going to draw some little circles inside my box, just kind of building it up. And whatever I do in one box, I'm kind of carrying that over. So if I did circles in the first box, I'm going to do some circles in each of those boxes. It doesn't have to be in the same place. It can be kind of all over, spread out. The idea is to kind of carry whatever mark making you're doing, carrying that through the whole grid. You can see that my circles are not perfect. My lines aren't straight. And that's because the focus isn't on creating this kind of beautiful, perfect piece. It's all about just kind of making the marks, focusing on that mark making. I think I shared before, sometimes I think we focus quite a bit on, are we doing it right? Are we making the right mark, doing the right thing? And one thing I love about mindful art practice is that, yes, whatever you do is right. It doesn't have to be perfect or straight. And just like that, the quote I shared earlier, the idea that there is beauty in that imperfection, and these flaws that we see, these so-called mistakes that we find, they're wonderful just as they are. They are perfect just as they are, right? We don't have to make them that way. And that's because it's all this focus on that process, that mark making. Sometimes we get these really beautiful drawings in the end, and that's great. But there's something about really slowing down and enjoying that process and that journey that can be really good for us and feel good for us. So I just want to encourage everyone to take your time with it. I've got another marker that I'm going to bring in. And just as you're using each of these supplies, whatever you're doing in one, just kind of continue that through to the others. For this one, I'm taking my blue marker and I'm just drawing a whole bunch of little lines. And I'm just carrying that through. They don't have to be the same. They can look, however, they can be completely different. And just kind of bringing whatever it is we're working through on all the way through. Changing utensils as you go, but carrying each utensil through each of those boxes, each of those squares. And again, you can follow along with me and do what I'm doing. You're totally welcome to do that, or you can go strike out on your own and be creative and go in a different direction. That's fine too. Just give yourself time to kind of try it out. And I know that sometimes when we're working on a project in front of us, sometimes our mind can wander a little bit. Know that that's okay. When your mind is wandering, it's just your brain doing what it was made to do, think and process. And it's okay when that happens. But just be gentle with yourself and just kind of gently guide your thoughts back to these grids, to the boxes in front of us. Maybe we can feel like we may not know what's going on or what the next step could be. And that's okay, because again, it's just like kind of trusting that process, making those marks and seeing where it takes us. And just kind of bring those through. If you're using that watercolor, bring that watercolor to each of those squares. If you're using collage paper, bring that collage paper to each of those squares. Know that it doesn't have to be a certain thing. This is open to however you want to do it. Also know that if you don't have a bunch of colors, that's also okay. It can be just a regular pencil, carrying that through each of the drawings. And just varying those marks each time. And take your time with it. Adding those little marks, adding the color. If you find yourself speeding up a little bit, also know that's okay. I know when I really get into a drawing, I start going fast and making marks quickly. So I have to take a moment to kind of step back and take a breath. And so there's nothing wrong with putting whatever utensil you're using, putting it down and refocusing your thoughts for just a moment, taking that deep breath. And then picking your supplies up again. And just gradually go through adding those marks. Whatever you do in one, whatever color, shape you're doing, just bring that in on all of them. It doesn't have to be the same exact mark or the same exact placement. It's just kind of making those marks, filling those squares. Know that whatever mark you make is exactly right and exactly what it needs to be. Whatever color you use is exactly right. It's because there's no wrong way or right way to do it. This really is just a process art. I'm just going to take your time with this drawing. Don't rush. No, it may feel like we don't know what we're doing or that next step, and it can feel a little like give us a little anxiety or stress. But I think there really is beauty in kind of letting go and trusting this process. So just take your time with it. Whatever mark you're doing, carrying that through, knowing it doesn't have to be exact. You can go outside the lines. You can overlap because we're not doing a specific representational drawing. We're just making those marks and letting those marks build up to create this finished piece. I know sometimes when we're working, we tend to be too close, I think, and all we can see are what we see as mistakes and flaws. But when we take that moment to kind of stand back and look at it as a whole, it's easier to see the beauty in the whole piece. Right? And just as was shared, like, I know it's hard to be okay with something we don't feel is right. It's hard to kind of let go. And it's definitely something I have to constantly practice, letting go, being okay. It's not perfect, and that's okay. I'm going to let myself enjoy the mark making. And I hope you're able to do that as we go through this project today, taking time to really enjoy the marks, giving ourselves permission to just be brave and make these marks, whatever they are. However they look, whatever colors come up, whatever shapes come up. However that looks. If you are at a place where you're like, you know what, I kind of like how this looks, it is completely okay to stop. I've decided, or I found, I guess, that the more I do this, the more I really enjoy seeing these little grids show up. There is something that's really nice about these not perfect patterns. Like there's repetition in it. There's, repeating of these marks, but it's not the same mark, if that makes sense. Like taking that scribble and carrying a scribble mark through each of these pieces, taking dots and putting dots in each of them. But those dots don't have to be the same. Those scribbles don't have to be the same. It really is taking time to just kind of be in the middle of that mark making, right?
Yeah.